All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Duckman TV. Got special guest on today, one of the commentating aficionados of Sydney Rugby, Tony Lewis. So, if you've followed Sydney Rugby for a while, it's transitioned from being with Channel 2, went to 7 and all this, and John Fordham bought in and had bits and pieces of it. And this guy worked with John Fordham, Nick McArdle, and all these guys in their commentary team, and has been around as part of the furniture of the setup of the commentary team, and very well respected within the Sydney rugby scene. It is a great honour to have you on tonight and pick your brain on all things rugby, Tony.
Oh, good on you, Matt. I'm a bit flabbergasted by your very kind words, mate. It's very kind of you. I don't know if I'm well respected, but we'll have a chat.
Yeah. So, how did your experience? How did you get involved in rugby to start off with? Where'd your experience start, and what's the picture look like to take you where you are today?
I've always loved the game, mate. I mean, I started, like most young blokes in New South Wales. I started playing at about the age of 6 or 7. Running around, and I just loved it. I always loved it. I was not a good player, but as Bob Dwyer said, I was an honest player.
Yeah.
And enjoyed myself a lot, and I've always been very, very, very passionate supporter, of the game and of Australian rugby in particular. And particularly the Wallabies. And after I left high school, I played for a few games for colleagues and for East, and then I headed overseas and ended up in the United States, where I lived for 10 years and was playing over there, and ended up coaching a team in the Salt Lake Valley, Salt Lake City, Utah, over there, which was a lot of fun. We did a lot of traveling around the Western United States. The Americans are big on tournaments, as you probably know. And there's some great tournaments in the Western United States. The Aspen Rugger Fest is it's massive, and the quality of play there is usually quite high.
Yep.
And in New Mexico and Colorado, tournaments all over the place. California, fantastic.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed with America, so I love wrestling. I follow the wrestling religiously, and there's a lot of guys in WWE wrestling that like got Daniel Vito that's come from the NRL here, played with Broncos and that stuff, is now making waves in WWE. He's on his way up, so he's not up near the top, but he's heading in the right direction. And you've got guys like Joe Inoue, or better known as Roman Reigns, in it. He was effectively a very, very good college footballer. Couldn't quite crack the big leagues for the NFL, which not everyone can. Even if you do make it, there's a lot of guys that make it a bit, but not like ingrained in it for 10 or 15 years. Now he's a WWE wrestler. He's got a Polynesian background and related to Dwayne Johnson. Is that whole market, so there's a huge Polynesian backlog of good athletes that are getting to 22, 23, can't get to the NFL. Why aren't they playing rugby? What's stopping that from happening? Could it happen?
Well, the American sports market is a little unusual in that the sports that attract the big money, the big TV money, and the enormous fan base are the American sports, the ones that have been invented by America. Baseball, basketball, American football, which was formulated from rugby union, of course. The line of scrimmage was their version of the scrum. That's what they did with the scrum. But and a game like our game, rugby union, which was sort of developed in England and played by the Commonwealth countries, has never really gained that much traction in the United States. Having said that, it's always been popular amongst the people, the fraternity and the sorority of players that actually play the game, and it's easy to find out the people, the very famous people that played rugby when they were at college. Bill Clinton was one of them. All the Kennedy,
really?
All the Kennedys played rugby when they were at college. Matt Damon was a pretty good player, I hear, and as you say, there's a lot of Polynesians now living in the United States, and the whole thing about being a good college athlete is that you may get a lot of attention as a college athlete, but it's not guaranteed that you're going to go to the pros, and it's really only in the States. It is the best of the best,
Yeah.
that get to the professional ranks. I'm talking about the NFL and the Major League Baseball and basketball and so on. So as you say, there are a lot of pretty good athletes that are kind of left behind, and one thing that causes these guys that I'm talking about, to come in and play rugby is that they love being involved in an organised sport. There's the fraternity of the team, and then there's travelling and so on. And if you just teach them the game, they're always very, very willing.
Yeah. As we said just before we kicked off, we're talking about Major League Rugby, so I wanted to chat to you about that as well. That has effectively drained a lot of quality players out of the Shute Shield into that competition to help make it stronger, build its foundations, and it's heading in the right direction. I think it's a 10-year to 20-year working project, but if the people are running the game in America are dedicated to it and stick with it, I think they're going to see big rewards because you've got this backlog of guys at the right age coming in that have probably come from a rugby background, don't make it in the NFL. Surely some of these guys are going to start transitioning across to rugby, and they're going to start to see rewards out of this because they're going to be able to go to things like the Olympics for sevens, compete in world tournaments and be competitive, and that's got to be a big appeal.
Definitely, and as we were saying before we kicked the podcast off, the United States has improved out of sight in sevens rugby because it is now an Olympic sport, and the Americans will definitely throw money at something in the chance of winning a gold medal at the Olympics. So, and we've seen the improvement in the US Eagles on the World Sevens circuit over the last, I don't know, half dozen to 10 years or so. Really, really outstanding, and getting to the point, where they're beating the All Blacks and they're winning tournaments. It really is a change, and I think that if they can just get themselves organised enough at the international level, they do really well. Having said that, I'm surprised that they were sort of beaten in their playoff situation to go to the World Cup. They play against Uruguay and Chile and, Brazil, South American countries. And I'm surprised that they weren't more successful against those countries, to be honest with you. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I would say Chile's been a bit of a surprise packet of the World Cup, but because even against Japan, they lost against Japan, the score ended up blowing out a bit. But until 15 minutes from the end, they were only down by 12 points. They were in the game. They had a genuine, serious opportunity and chance to win. As lack of experience and the fact that the Cherry Blossoms are a very, very good team and been around the World Cup for a lot. So with experienced coaches, they were able to just consolidate their position and finish the game off. So take the chances when they presented and get results with it. So, and that Chile didn't have that sort of finesse to finish off the game.
That's right, and I've been very impressed with them, just like I was in 2019 when Uruguay knocked off Fiji in the in that World Cup. That was an amazing win for the Uruguayans. But it's great to see these so-called minnow countries, representing on the world stage, and it can only be good for the game, I think. But you opened that conversation, Matty, by talking about Aussies going to play in the United States, and I think this is a reality that we in Australian rugby are going to have to accept and deal with in the coming years, in that our most elite players are going to go where the big money is.
Yeah.
And it's the time has long gone, I think, where we can rely on people's respect and love for the jersey and go, well, if you don't want to play in Australia, then you're not going to get picked for the Wallabies. Man, I think we've got to can the Giddo rule and just make it open slather. You know what I mean? Like, if the best players, go and play, in Europe or Japan or America or where the money is, that's fine. Let them play wherever the hell they want, but let's get them back for the test matches I mean, they only need 2 or 3 weeks in camp, surely,
Yeah.
to get things together. But I think we're going to have to do that, mate.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree. So I think that you need to pick the best players, or if they're available, you need to pick the best players available for your nation, whoever they are, wherever they're based at any time.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily disagree if Eddie Jones doing the rebuild that he's doing, but Australian rugby, we put our own barriers in the way of making things successful. So by having the Giddo rule and all these different things, so you can only play for Australia if you're overseas, if you played 60 tests beforehand and you're a veteran. So it wipes all the young guys out altogether.
Yeah.
Surely that rule is like archaic effectively now and like out of touch with the reality of what the best wallaby side could be.
Look, I'm no great fan of South African rugby. I mean, I respect them a lot, but this is what they've done. They've just gone, you know what, this is what we have to do. And they've let their players go and play wherever they want, and then they get them together for the internationals. And they're doing quite well, you know. I mean, they're not doing badly at all,
Yeah.
the Springboks. So,
Yeah.
maybe that's something we could look at, I mean, there's so many, ideas that people have sort of going forward for the game. But there really does need to be, change on a root and branch, level. And
Yeah.
I think there's got to be some brutal decisions made. And my only concern is that the review process and the decisions made are going to be made by the people that got us into this mess in the first place. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Well, when I've interviewed Dave Moffat a couple of times, he told me he believes that some of the rules that come around that we're doing for the whole SANZAR body, so Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, at the time come up for participation agreement with a rule that fit one shoe fits all, right? So everybody played by the same rules. So you got players overseas, can't pick them. And that was all good until South Africa left and started being involved in Northern Hemisphere rugby. And they're gone, well, your rules suck anyway, so we're going to just do what's best for South African rugby, and they are, and they're seeing the rewards of that. New Zealand have enough depth to be able to probably play that still and do it. Australian rugby, I think we've been greatly diminished the last couple of years by COVID getting players want to go overseas and play now. So get tier two guys like fringe Super Rugby players or guys that could possibly be considered for international rugby, well, they're not available anymore because they've gone off on a sojourn to Japan, France, Romania, wherever, playing professional rugby, earning some good money and living a pretty good lifestyle.
And why shouldn't they? I mean, that should be available to them. I mean, they've got a skill that's going to earn them big money on the world market. Hey, have at it, boys. But I mean, let's be realistic about it and say, no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you're playing, you are eligible to be picked for the Wallabies. And
Yeah.
then try and get them back here, in time enough to help us in the Test matches. I mean, it's been great to have Skelton involved. It's such a damn shame that he got injured in the first game. We haven't seen that much of him. But I thought one of the few good things that Eddie Jones did was to give him the captaincy, because I think he's a good captain. I think he's a good leader. He impressed me in the only game I saw him playing, which was, I saw the warm up against France, but then the Georgian game and stuff like that. I just think Big Willie's, he's one of the guys that we're talking about. He should be, one of the first picked, no matter where he's playing, for mine.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's good. He's good enough. Why wouldn't you consider him? He's our biggest lock that we got, and he's an enforcer. He's going to get the job done.
Well, that's right. And I mean, one of the frustrating things is that these blokes that leave Australia and go and play overseas, when they leave Australia, we're kind of like, no great loss. They weren't that good anyway. And then a year or two later, we hear they're like tearing it up in the Heineken Cup or whatever, and they've really, really improved their game. And it just makes me wonder, is our programs here, are they so poor? But I think they must be, man, because look at where we are today, and the whole thing is that we haven't got the quality players to compete at the top level. I mean, you compare this current Wallaby side with the Wallaby side of 25 years ago, the Eels world champions side, George Gregan, Matty Burke, Joe Roth, Ben Shune, Eels, Dick Harry. They all had rugby DNA, rugby nous, rugby smarts enough to be able to sort of not make the stupid mistakes on field that we see these days. I mean, it looks to me like Eddie Jones has coached all the confidence out of these players, mate. I mean, some of the mistakes they were making against Wales were just schoolboy
fundamental
errors,
errors.
fundamental, and they just look really nervous, And this
Yeah,
is what happened last time we had Jones coaching the national setup. He inherited a champion team from Rod McQueen, and within a couple of years, he had every single player pissed off at him. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
he's a micromanager.
yeah,
He's all over everything, mate. And you've got to do it his way, or it's the highway for
yeah.
you. And I mean, it's not. I don't think it really works, and I don't think it's going to work now because I think that he's lost the players already. Seems like to me,
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, I think so. The question is, if he doesn't do it, who moves into that role now? Who's the
well,
next choice?
well, exactly,
So
exactly.
it's
We've got to try and get people like Nusafora back
yeah,
to get involved. People like Scott Wisemantle, um, Tony. Is it Tony Johnson?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Even Simon Cron's too. I think he's still developing as a coach. I think it'd be too big a task to put him in for any sort of real high level
I
thing
think
with the
so.
Wallabies at the moment. So
Yeah, I think so. Let Cronny, get the force firing. Which
yeah,
he will. I think he's got some good players coming over, and
yeah,
he's a hell of a good coach, Cronny,
yeah,
and see how he does over there. And I mean DC with the Waratahs as well.
yeah,
We're just going to see what happens there, but hopefully he's got some second rowers and some tight five
yeah.
members.
See, one thing I think's odd is in Australia, right? We have this expectation we're going to have a top four in the world side, but let's look at the top eight sides in the world. So take us out of the picture. England, professional cup competition, Heineken Cup. Right. South Africa, Curry Cup, professional competition, other players playing in Europe. New Zealand, professional cup competition, NPC, and Super Rugby, players playing overseas as well. So like Japan, they got their competition. France top 14. I can keep naming them. They're all professional competitions. The Shute Shield is an amateur competition. So why do we think we're going to get international professional standards with guys that are going to match it with people week in, week out when the best competition we've got below Super Rugby, and there's not many people in that, and there's probably too many in it already, according to a couple of people I've spoken to, and it can't disagree because Australia's not firing an up the top couple all the time. Our best professional competition is a part-time professional competition, which is Super Rugby, and the level below is amateur football.
I know, and they've tried to address that, haven't they, a few times with the NRC,
Yeah, the
NRC,
NRC, yeah.
NRC, and in various iterations over the years, and but it always seems to like fall over, and I'm not sure why that is. It must just be a lack of money, I think,
Yeah,
because they're not cheap to run those things, and also when you look at France, for example, I mean all of their clubs are privately owned. You
yeah.
know,
Oh, there you go. So that's a different model.
yeah. I mean that makes a difference if you've got billionaires who love the game, sort of
Yeah,
throwing money around. But I don't know. I don't think that would happen here because we haven't got that many billionaires or even millionaires willing to throw their money, at rugby. I mean, Andrew Forrest, perhaps.
yeah.
But then how much control do we give him? If he kicks in $100 million, how much control do we give him?
I can tell you now, if you tipped in 100 million at the moment, I think that covers the TV rights deal for about 5 years, doesn't it? You'd have a fair level of ownership of what's happening in rugby in Australia.
Oh, my word, But I mean, if he says, okay, I'll give you $100 million, but I want to be chairman of Rugby Australia, do we just go, yeah, okay, Twiggy, no worries, mate. Off you go. I mean, is that, or is that a dangerous sort of precedent to make? But I think McLennan's got to go, don't you?
Yeah, well, he's promised a lot of stuff and hasn't not getting the runs on the board at the moment and upsetting a lot of people. So if I would have thought, so when you've got a board underneath you in a role like he's got, I got told he signed Eddie Jones on the spot. So over a lunch or something like that, I would have thought that you'd be running that stuff past the board before you make appointments. And he didn't just make an appointment, he had to get rid of a coach too. So how much are we still paying for Dave Rennie at the moment?
Well, he overruled the board, Hamish
Yeah,
McLennan did, to hire Eddie. And I'm thinking to myself, why does this guy have so much unilateral power that he can overrule the board on such a critical question, sort of as this? Because I think he kind of like is a bit of a hero worshipper of Eddie and thinks he's like the best coach in the world or whatever. But as soon as they said he's coming back, like Rennie's getting fired and Jones is coming back, I was like, oh, mate, this is just, it's so typical of Australian rugby. You know, it's like the sort of the cat-handed decision that Australian rugby makes like all the time, you know. But in this case, it was made by one guy, you know, on his own kind of feelings. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Now the other funny thing we're starting to hear is I'll replace Eddie Jones with Robbie Deans. Like, are we trying to go back to the future all the time? We're going to keep going back to Robbie Deans I think Robbie Deans did a good job when he was here, and we got rid of him too early. But it's doing the same thing again. Like, we're not learning from our mistakes. We keep doing the same thing.
Oh, really? I mean, you know, what was in the press today, Angus Crichton's been offered 1.6 mil a year to come and play union. Just, I mean, it's, you know, it's sort of cloth-headed decisions like this that just make me shake my head. Like, I mean, what is McLennan trying to do, you know, releasing this news? Is he trying to sort of create a distraction from the World Cup, or, you know, what the hell's going on? But it just seems like such a ridiculous decision to release right now with the way things are, that what we recruited another league player. I mean, I know Angus Crichton is a good rugby player, Aussie schoolboy, and played at Scots and all the rest of it. But, you know, again, that's money that they don't have. And it's money that can be better spent in other places, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
I look at Selassie Vunivalu as well. When we signed him, I don't know how much Rugby Australia paid for his contract, but the fact that it was getting dropped around, it's getting 900 a year. Well, who's paying? How much are Queensland Reds paying? How much is Rugby Australia paying? He's not. Is he worth 450? I don't know. How do you quantify that? Like, how many young players could we keep in the game that are emerging talent with 900,000? Surely be able to keep 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, the game has been mismanaged since it went professional in this country in 1995, you know, and John O'Neill instigated a policy of taking care of the top of the pyramid over everything else, because this is how we make our money, through the Wallabies, through the Lions tours, through Super Rugby, you know. So we need to have the most elite players playing at that. And the money for the so-called grassroots just dried up. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that, you know, the clubs were getting, you know, in the 6 figures from the ARU, you know, when Bill Pulver was there, and you know, we went from like $500,000, next year 200,000, next year 50,000, next year nothing, you know. So clubs have just been so squeezed financially, you know. But I think that you know, we got to bite the bullet. We have to concentrate on the bottom of the pyramid. You know, we do I think have to go through some pain and some losses, and we do need to fall down the rankings a bit. I do agree with Eddie Jones on that. I don't think Eddie Jones is the guy that's going to turn Australian rugby around and get it headed in the right direction. If I thought that he was the guy, I'd be behind him 100%. But I just don't think he's the guy. I don't think he can, you know, get the players on board as much as they need to be on board. Because what we need is, well, first of all, we need a national coaching strategy for a start. You know, I mean, when Dick Marks was running the coaching for Australian rugby, you know, everything was humming along pretty well. You know, we need to have a certain style of rugby that we coach, from the Beecroft under-9s up to the Wallabies, you know. So that's the thing that needs to happen, I think. And, so many other things, but the ship needs to be turned around and set heading in the right direction. And if we have a coach that can do that, that's great. I just don't think Eddie Jones is the guy,
Yeah. Well, this is strangely enough, this is what they do in football, right? So we talked about before with overseas players being over in Europe playing and that. Our Australian soccer team, the Socceroos, they have a squad that play based out of Australian-based players and Asian-based players for tournaments that are in or around this level, mini games or things that aren't all that sharp and don't matter all that much. They've got another team based in Europe, but they'll pick out European-based players and stuff like that that will participate in friendly games over there and that. Then they pick the best of the best when we've got Asian Cup tournaments, World Cup tournaments. Surely the Wallabies can be replicating that model somewhat. And in regards, like you're talking about the competition, football, like Football Australia, developed a football philosophy, what they want everyone to play. And it's not the best in the world, but it's become an Australian adopted practice across the board that they coach the coaches the same way. So the coaches will get the same outcomes. So if I coach Ropes Crossing Premier League, which I did in the past, so that will get a different outcome. If I coach low level under six or soccer somewhere, they get the outcome. If you coach them with Ange Postecoglou and Socceroos and Graham Arnold, they coach the same. So they've got obviously more extensive experience on it, but you coach them within that framework that will take you potentially to that pathway. Surely rugby's got to look at that, something like that. So at the moment, everyone just does their own thing. And that's why people are all over the place. No one knows what they want to do. So,
mate, it's such a bullshit political scene, Australian rugby. I'll tell you, there are people that just want to get jobs or positions in the hierarchy of Australian rugby, just so they can, boast to their mates that they're doing it, and everyone jealously guards their own little sphere of influence or their own little fiefdom or whatever. As you say, nobody's working together, nobody's getting together, sitting down, brainstorming, coming up with the best ideas. It's, there's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of, throwing people under the bus. It's just not a good scene, mate,
Yeah. Now, you're from the eastern suburbs area, live in around Bondi, Rose Bay, been tied in with East Rugby Club for a long time, as just said before. John Murray was a pretty strong advocate about different things in competition. I've seen him release an article the other day where he thinks that Super Rugby is perhaps on its way out. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think maybe not completely on its way out, but they need to remodel what it is. I don't think it's viable for Australian rugby to have 5 full-time professional teams now. I don't think the talent's there to do it.
I agree.
Or the money.
I agree. In both cases, and I think it's very bloody sad for the people of Perth and the people of Melbourne, the rugby tragics in those two places. But it's just 5 teams is just not working. It's not working, and I think we've got a lot of guys playing Super Rugby that probably wouldn't be playing Super Rugby if they were in another country. If they're in New Zealand or if they're in France or the UK or whatever. I don't know. It's a tricky one. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for Victorian rugby and for West Australian rugby. And, I want both those states to have the benefit of having a representative team in some manner. But, I keep coming back to the fact that 5 teams is just too many, and it's killing us.
Yeah. So it'd be a completely different story we'd be having a different chat if rugby was making. So I think we're in a false sense of security based on the fact we made $47 million profit on the back of the 2003 Rugby World Cup when we hosted it. Do you think that made everyone think we're printing money here in Australia? This is going to be easy?
I think so. I think we had so much success back then, and I think O'Neill was a pretty good, chairman. He's a very, savvy guy, financially savvy guy, obviously. And I think that people just assumed that we were going to continue to have that level of success. and what they didn't realise is that in Nick Farr-Jones's world champion team and John Eales's world champion team, those two teams were like once in a generation player groups. You know what I mean? It's unusual to get to such fabulous teams so close together historically, but it's just it's not working now. And like I say, I mean, you think about the players that are wearing green and gold today, and you compare them to those blokes back then, and there's no comparison.
Yeah,
there's just no comparison. And it really worries me. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the players that we're seeing now, the elite players that we're seeing now in the Wallabies and the Super Rugby setups, we are beginning to see the first players born after that John Eales championship team, that era of greatness, if you like, which ended for us in about 2003. So we're seeing blokes that were born around that time. They're coming up, and I just wondered, like, in one generation, have we lost? That DNA, that nous, that the rugby smarts that those guys had. Have we lost that in one generation?
Yeah. Well, it feels like that's the case. I interviewed Gordon Bray too a couple of years ago and asked Gordon what he thought of all the great players, everything over history of rugby, and he told me an interesting story. So I looked at the history of Australian rugby from the very first Test match in 1899 right through to now. We only really had a period of success in rugby, from what I can work out, from about 84, around about Alan Jones taking over, till about 2003. So only about 20 years. The rest of the time, rugby in Australia haven't been lighting the world on fire. It had strong teams, had good teams, but not like we're dominating the world in the top couple of sides. It's never always been like that.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, I remember, I think it was the 1980 team that went to the UK. It might have been 81. Paul McLean and Tony Shaw and Mark Lone and all those boys, and they lost every Test match. They didn't win a Test match on tour. So yeah, you're right. You're right. It's not like we've got this fabulous legacy of winning rugby like like New Zealand does. We just don't. But we can be doing so much better than we're doing now. That's the frustrating thing. I think, and Christ, they need to move away. The administration needs to move away from this whole kind of, like, and I don't want to trot out the cliches here, but the old boy network and the old club tie, and McLennan is an old boy of Shaw. So who does he put in as the guy to run things? Another old boy of Shaw, Phil Waugh. So that sort of thing. And I think we need some bloody regular people up there on the board. Some people that love the game, that are going to come in and just bust their ass for the good of the game.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So I always joke about it and tell everybody when I commentate, and I make a joke that driving in from Glenmore Park and coming to like Millionaires Road and I'm going to Warringah and that. And I also joke about I went to public schools, right? And I joked that my general fee in year 12 was only $12 at Windsor High School. So I have a $12 high school education, and some of these guys are paying 30 grand a year to go to Kings or wherever. Pick your school, doesn't particularly matter. Scots, all these different places, and I like that I can be associated with the game, but I can't remember the last guy that come through the public school system and made the Wallabies. Can't remember who's done it. There have been guys that have done it, but gee, I can't remember off the top of my head from a local public school in New South Wales, Queensland, or anywhere.
I can't remember either. I was talking about Stevie Merrick today. Remember Steve Merrick? He played about 3 tests. He was a coal miner from Singleton.
Yeah.
Played halfback, and might have come in when Gregan was injured. I'm talking about the mid-90s, I think, early to mid-90s. But he only played 3 or 4 test matches, but he was a brilliant halfback. He was a really, really good player, you know. But I think he came from the public school system. And you remember Sitaleki Tamani, that enormous second rower for the Waratahs?
Yeah.
Didn't he come through the public school system? Oh,
I'm
Endeavour
not.
Sports Side. That's not really a private. That's not really a public school, is
Yeah,
it?
I'm not sure. That's still selective sports school, but it's not a GPF school. So
It's not a
the
GPS school. No, no, no,
yeah.
no.
So some of the problem I've got, and I don't have a chip on my. It'll look like I've got a chip on my shoulder. But I do have a problem that you can go through the private school or GPS system, CCS, pick your IA, ICA system, whatever schools, doesn't particularly matter. How can you go from playing schoolboy football, divert a whole level, skip a whole level of playing against men, and go from school rugby to playing for New South Wales Waratahs? But you don't have to play any Shute Shield games or cut your teeth for that level. How does that happen? I'm not sure. And some of these guys get fast track because they've got super talent, but they're skipping levels of playing against men and then potentially playing for the Wallabies. We've only playing maybe 10 to 15 games against men, if that. Like, I don't think that happens in New Zealand, and I'm pretty sure it's not happening in Europe.
No, yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Matty. Yeah, I mean, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. The game's in trouble, you know, in this country.
Yeah. So being involved with Easts, big unique challenges there. So it's a strong rugby area, the eastern suburbs. But there's not, I wouldn't imagine there's a massive population of people that still want to play rugby down there these days. It's not easy just to go, going to pull 50 kids off the street, right, and just walk along and grab 50 who want to play because housing in Sydney is unaffordable now, basically. Even where I live, Glenmore Park, it's nearly unaffordable to buy houses. So people are stopping playing rugby for the love of the game because they got to afford to live too. Do you think that's contributing to some of the problems we got getting,
Yeah,
keeping, and retaining players?
well, I think it probably is. I think there's less young people playing the game, you
Yeah,
know, these days. Obviously, you know, East are in a good situation in that we've got a few schools in the area that you know we get a lot of players from, particularly lately because the club's been doing well. Not so much Shute Shield, but certainly lower grades and the clubhouse itself. You know, we're in a very good position. We've got Benny Batcher coming in as head coach for next season, and 26. I think he signed a 2-year contract. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm very excited about that. You
yeah,
know, but I think that they've got to get more people playing, and I mean, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. Let's look at what the AFL's done. You know, I mean, I know the AFL is rolling in cash and all the rest of it, but the way that they have, you know, got young students in traditional sort of rugby areas and traditional rugby schools to take up Aussie rules is extraordinary. You know, and should be emulated.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah, I know a few rugby development officers, and I know a few AFL football development officers, and they've got a big area to cover, similar to the rugby guys. And they told me the AFL gives effectively is giving them a war chest. Go to the school, take footballs into the school, want to get these schools playing because might turn over AFL players, and it's starting to get success. So they've taken an aggressive approach, taken on the NRL scared of AFL. I think rugby's less scared because we're getting pumped and we're getting handpicked at going to GPS schools and just picking what they want. I want particular body types. Oh, 6'5". Don't play rugby, mate. Come and play AFL. You could make 3, 4, 500,000 a year and set yourself up for life. And you're probably not going to get too busted either doing it. So
exactly. Plus, it's a fun game to play. They tell me Aussie
yeah,
rules, but yeah, look, it's a worry, you know. I mean, they really have to address this issue of getting it back in the schools. You know, I mean, the day, you know, I mean, Randwick Boys High used to play rugby. You know, Matraville High School. You
yeah,
know, that's where the Ellas went, wasn't it? You
yeah,
know, or was it Randwick? I'm not sure. You know, but
yeah,
there was public schools that had you know, rugby union traditions, and they need to try and get that happening again. I mean, obviously, the big problem is money.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know. You know, we've got some pretty creative financial heads involved
yeah.
with the game. Surely to God, they can get together, make something happen.
Yeah, that's why I think it's weird. We've got all these brilliant commercial people with business acumen up to their eyeballs and can turn over like considerable profit margins for big international companies and that. What happens when they get involved with rugby clubs? So where's the breakdown? There's a breakdown there somewhere.
Well,
So
exactly, and it's sort of, I think it maybe connects back to my earlier remark that they're not really serious about their job promoting rugby union football. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They don't want to do much work. They just want to brag to their mates that they're, I don't bloody know.
yeah,
But I mean, that's how it seems like to me, because you're right. They should be addressing this money issue and addressing all the other issues and bloody working together. And I
yeah,
just don't see it. I see it's too fractured. It's too splintered, the Australian rugby
yeah.
landscape, and everybody's worried about their own job and their own piece of pie, and they're not really willing to stretch out and help anybody else do.
Yeah, that's what I think's happening. I think that everyone's so worried that they're going to lose what they've got that they're scared to consolidate resources for the better of the game. So, and if you look at one thing we've got, there's a huge Polynesian population now, and these guys are looking for. So the Polynesian guys I know in the West, they're looking for jobs. So they'll play people who've got a bit of money. They're looking for like career opportunities too. So people help them out, and you get them a job, like not just a bum job as a labourer or something. Like help these guys get some sort of career pathway, whatever that is, including trades. We might get some like uh, designated return. So they'll give you a return on your investment. They'll be dedicated to your club and help things out. So then it doesn't have to be all about just money because you're helping this guy help his family. They're big on the family units, weren't we? Look, it's all big picture stuff.
Oh, yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. It's good to see, a number of clubs now have sort of partnered up with tertiary institutions,
Yeah,
TAFE or universities or whatever, and trying to get these guys into like a career path that they're happy with, and help them like that, rather than try to scrounge around so they can get paid $250 a game or $300 a game or whatever.
yeah,
I mean, look, I don't know how to fix the problem, but all
yeah,
I know is that really radical decisions need to be made, and tough decisions, tough options, tough choices
yeah,
need to be made. Otherwise, the game's going to die out in this country.
yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
I'll be around to see it, but I think in the next 100 years, it'll just die out.
yeah. I think it's got to that level, unfortunately.
Yep.
Um, we'll go on to some good things here. So, your career commentating, how did you get in the commentating and how
It's
did it eventuate? And what are some of your highlights you have when you're commentating?
Well, I've always enjoyed being behind the microphone. When I was living in America and going to university over there, I had a radio show that I did on the campus radio station,
Yeah,
which was called Looking Over Down Under,
yeah,
every Monday night, and we got quite the following, But we only played Aussie music and good Aussie music. There was no Air Supply or Olivia Newton-John, anything like that. So I've always enjoyed being behind the microphone, and I was, ground announcing at East,
yeah,
a little bit, but enough for John Murray to have heard me behind the mic. And then at the beginning, it was pre-season 2012, I think, and I was over watching East play on a pre-season match on colleagues' fields, and I overheard this guy behind me having a conversation, and somebody said to him, "Oh, have you found your commentators yet?" And this guy said, "Well, no, we're still looking." And I turned around and I said, "Look, any commentary work?" I said, "I'm really, really interested." And that was John Murray, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I've heard your ground announcing. You said you'd be good," and that's what kicked it off. And I think we originally had about 4 or 5 blokes, come and try and get the job for Club Rugby TV, which was John Murray's and Nick Fordham's company that bought the rights to Shute Shield. But I was the only one that sort of stuck it out, and Gordy Bray is the best friend of a great friend of mine, Peter Shipway. And so through Shippo, I was able to meet Gordon and talk to him about his career and talk about commentary and show him some of my games and get some insight from him and some gentle sort of criticism. And then next thing I know, they bought the rights, when the ABC stopped doing it and when Tony Abbott cut their funding. And, they were spending a lot of money on their outside broadcasts, the ABC. I think we managed to do it for less than half of what they were doing it for. But and all of a sudden, I'm calling the games on Channel 7, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget the first game that we did because, Murray said, "Okay, here's the crew. We've got big Andrew Swain, and then Cam Shepherd's going to be, your colour commentator. He'll be next to you, and then I've forgotten his name. Will Davies came on board with us and was on the sideline and stuff. But the very first game that we did, which was East versus Gordon, and it was at Wallara Oval, was an absolute shambles, mate. I just can't tell you how bad it was, how bad we were. I mean, mistakes all over the place. I'm misidentifying players. Had no idea. I'm swearing on air. I had no idea what was going on. It was an absolute shambles. But we got through it, and there was no complaints from the poo bars at Channel 7, And anyway, once we got through that, we just started to slowly sort of get it together. And then, I think we by sort of year 2 and year 3, we were doing a pretty good job with it. I mean, I loved it, man. I loved it. I really loved doing it. And I was so upset when they sold the rights. I'm like, no, you shouldn't have done that. Anyway, but they needed to go back to Rugby Australia. But it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing it again if I can organise a gig.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking forward to as well. I'm trying to reach out to Rugby Australia myself, chasing get back to. I enjoyed doing Shute Shield games, but I was stuck with subbies. Took the safe option, and I love it. I love it. I just love commentating. It's exciting to be involved in something that you're doing. So that's the
I
good
love
things
it too.
about
I mean, I called some lower grade games for Clutch. I mean, I was calling second grade Colts at one stage, and I enjoyed that as much as calling, Shute Shield, Uni versus whoever, you know what I mean, or East versus whoever. But just calling the Colts and the second graders and the third graders, I had a lot of fun. But Clutch has gone into administration. Did you see that?
Yeah, just seen. I was just going to say that to you. On Monday, went into administration, so all the balls are up in the air with what I was planning on doing next year. May need to be revisited in that. So I'm not sure Duckman TV is the big media empire I want it to be able to lay something down.
Tell me about the nickname. How'd you get the nickname?
When I was playing rugby out at Hawkesbury Valley, so when I was at school, my nickname forever, I'm 6'5", my nickname was Lurch. So
Lurch,
at
right,
school
okay.
for years and years. And when I started playing rugby union at Hawkesbury Valley after playing Colts at Penrith, went out Hawkesbury Valley when I was 19 in back in 1997. And I was kicking around playing 4th grade and 3rd grade, so I should have been playing higher, but not training very serious. And we are playing against it was Barker or Seabob was playing against one of them, and they're busting us up a little bit. And the coach at half time, but I've become really good friends with, is going, "Oh, you're going to do this and that. Get bust this guy. Follow the Duckman. The Duckman will run around and smash him." Just went, "Oh yeah, sweet." They give me a nickname. If you give yourself a nickname, you're a bit of a wanker, right? So they gave me a nickname Duckman. I asked him after the game, "How come you gave me a nickname Duckman?" He goes, "You run like a duck with a pole up your ass." Like, righty, okay. I'll go with that. So I run very straight-legged and that, and very upright. So I like it. I didn't make it, and it's just stuck with me for the last 26 years. So yeah, resident. A lot of people know me through rugby now from that. So it's a lot of fun. I like being involved in rugby. It's very social, and despite that, there's a lot of heat on the field, right? Everyone's trying to do their best, but afterwards you can walk off. And I think it's only a handful of times in 30-something years I've been involved in rugby well, I walked off the field, not be able to have a drink with someone after the game because of bad blood or whatever. Like 99 times out of 100 is leave it on the field. It is what it is. You just deal with it. A couple of times I've had things happen where, nah, mate, it's a bit of a problem. So you'll try to apologise, or they'll try to apologise, and yeah, just you can't do it. Other than that, yeah, it's great. It's a great game to be involved in, and it's sad to see rugby where it's at now.
Terribly sad. I mean, it's shocking. You know, I mean, I must say that I bought into the Eddie hype a little bit, you know, and the Eddie hope a little bit, thinking, oh yeah, well, we'll probably, you know, we'll make the semis, but gee, they've been brutally exposed this World Cup. Our current Wallabies side, they've been brutally exposed. You know, it's a shame.
So I went to Briar Sports Lunch earlier in the year and met Eddie Jones and had a chat to him, and he was good. He answered my questions I asked him, and I said, "Are there too many sides in Super Rugby? Is it diluting the talent too much?" He goes, "They're good questions." Goes, "You would think there is, wouldn't you?" So he goes, "Because we've got a lot of people at that level, but they should be, if they're playing Super Rugby level, they should be in qualification to play for the Wallabies, and it's not the case at the moment, right? We've got, let's say, 200 people playing Super Rugby level, including your reserves and the bigger squads, that there wouldn't be 200 people who are Wallabies players playing that level. It'd be like if there's 35 or 40.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no doubt he's a good coach. You know, he's got the runs on the board and all the rest of it. But just, I mean, what I heard from sort of inside the camp last time he had the reins here was a bit disturbing, and I don't think he's changed his ways. You know, and he's such a control freak and such a micromanager that you know, sooner or later people just get totally sick of people like that. You know?
When I saw him, when I was chatting to him, he looked tired, and that was a couple of months ago. He looked tired, like, oh, the England job's taken it out of me. I'm feeling right. He won't say it, but he just looks physically and mentally drained, like he needs a break. And he's rolled out of one job straight into another. Well, I don't know. That was the smartest thing to do ever. So I would have wanted to have a bit of a break, because I've done it even in my professional career, changed from one job to another without having a break. And then you end up going like a year to 2 years without a break before you have a break. Like that's not good. So because you're not performing at your best. So is he even performing at his best at the moment? I'm not sure.
It's a good question, mate. He's a very, very intense bloke, you know, and maybe he, you know, fired himself up thinking about, like, I'm the guy that can turn Australian rugby around, and that's what he keeps saying now. You know, it's you know, this is all part of the journey, and you know, short-term pain for long-term gain. And stuff like that. And I don't disagree with that. You know, like I said before, I don't disagree with that. And I think to a certain degree that's what needs to happen. I just don't think he's the man to do it, though. You know. I mean, if we had a, I keep waiting for the next Rod McQueen. Where is the next Rod McQueen? You know. I mean, he was such an innovator and such a good coach. You know, and the defensive strategies that he instilled at the Wallabies had all the rest of the world rethinking their attack strategies to try and unpick the Wallaby defence, you know? So it was a real kind of step forward for worldwide rugby that was, you know, brought by Rod McQueen and Australia's Wallabies. But of course, you know, once the attack works out to how to unlock the defence, then the defence needs to get stronger, and so on and so forth.
See, I genuinely thought before Brad Thorne got sacked, I thought he was looking like he would be a good option to be Wallabies coach as well. And then he got dismissed, and he's having a break from all duties he's doing, professional coaching, and probably needs it too. DC would be a developing coach on the way up. You'd be looking at as probably a 5-year thing. I'm not sure if you'd do it any sooner. So I think he likes the gig that he's got right now. but he'll need to get some results with the Waratahs, or they might flick him as well, because it's just the world's become impatient. We expect instant results, but are our sides as good as perhaps what our expectation of our sides is?
No, they're not. That's the short answer. No, they're not. They're not. They're not very good. And just look at our record against the Kiwis.
Yeah.
It's a different level, mate. It's a different level. I mean, one of the huge things for Australian rugby was when Queensland went to Otago, I think. No, Waikato, and beat the Chiefs. For the first time that season. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, well, what did they do exactly? They didn't really do anything except they did the little things right. They really did, and they shut down this very, very good Waikato side. But I don't know. I don't really have the answers, mate.
Yeah.
I just think they've got to make some, big changes and do it quickly.
Yeah. So let's have a look at the Rugby World Cup to start winding this up. I'm going to make a big call here. South Africa got themselves in the spot of bother when they lost to Ireland. Scotland are punching above their weight. Scotland haven't played South Africa yet. Can Scotland beat South? I think Scotland's got the potential to beat South Africa. Do you reckon they could do it, cause an upset, and knock them out?
I think they could. Yeah, I think they could. I mean, the Springboks are they're going pretty well, but they're pretty one dimensional too.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Nehemiah is going to keep with this strategy of putting 7 forwards on the bench, because that really came back to hurt them against Ireland.
Yeah.
They had no backup. Almost said quarterback, halfback, and then when Faf de Klerk got injured, they were in trouble there. So, we'll see. Gregor Townsend's a very good coach. He's very cagey. He was a very good player, very, very smart player, and he's a very smart coach as well. And I think if anybody can engineer that sort of upset, Gregor Townsend can do it. It's another thing too. Jack Dempsey is now their starting 8.
Yeah.
Isn't he? And I mean, over here, he wasn't even a definite starter for the Waratahs, was he? I mean, well,
No, I don't think he was.
Yeah.
So it's funny how guys have left Australia that weren't doing too much. Devine was another one that went over to playing in New Zealand in NPC, ended up playing for the All Blacks, but couldn't even get a look in Super Rugby over here.
That's exactly right. And there was that prop that had a couple of years. Angus Tartaval had a couple of years with New South Wales Waratahs, and he wasn't that crash shot. Then he goes back home to New Zealand. Next thing, he's wearing all black. I mean, my goodness. So I think that it's really our sort of overall coaching strategy that's the problem. I think and the lack of people really working together in a serious way. I think that needs to be addressed and fixed.
So who do we think will win? Who do you think will actually win the World Cup at the moment?
I think Ireland's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ireland's looking hard to beat, I think.
Yeah. So from what I haven't seen Ireland play yet, didn't see the game against South Africa. I have seen France play a couple of games, and I like what they're doing. They're just grinding teams into the ground, kicking when it's there. Playing a bit like South Africa, but more a Northern Hemisphere style. So they don't care if they've got to play ugly and have 65 phases to get a try, or wait till they get a penalty. They'll work it like that. That's all right.
Yep. Not sure how they're going to go with if DuPont is going to play with that broken jaw. There was talk about him getting a special kind of a protective sort of a mask, but I don't know. It's a hell of a risk, isn't it? Play with a broken jaw, and he's so iconic for them, so talismanic for them, so important for them. Really is the linchpin of their team. He's the number 1 rugby player in the world, generally accepted today. But they could struggle. They could struggle if that broken jaw sort of keeps him out.
Well, that's the problem. So they got big locks similar to South Africa. I think if you took out their big lock, so they weren't running hard through the middle, just building phase after phase after phase, you could break that down and give them more penalties or something to break their game up. I actually think you might take out some of their strike weapons by just bringing in just just a lot of free kicks, just dumb stuff like lay in the ruck, just slow the ball down, deliberately play offside, and just encroach all that stuff. Make them have to keep playing different all the time. If you break the structured play, I think it might pay some dividends. So
Well, yeah. So make it ugly. I mean, that's a winning strategy. A lot of
yeah,
times, just make it as ugly as you can, slow it down, frustrate them, put them
yeah,
off their rhythm, get up in their faces, upset them a little bit.
yeah,
So yeah, we'll see. But I think out of all the teams at the tournament that I've seen so far, Ireland is looking the best.
yeah. And I
For,
think
for,
Wales are in the right side of the draw now to get to the semis, at
yes,
least.
yes,
And they actually, with Warren Gatland back, they look pretty good. So
they do, they do.
it'll be interesting to see how much deeper they'll go with the run. So it depends who drops in their side of the draw when it gets to semi-final level, I imagine, because they really probably look the best out of the Six Nation sides other than Ireland at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. England's got a bit of a question mark over them. It's hard to tell how they're going to do. I mean, they were so sort of terrible leading up to the World Cup, but they've looked a bit better once the tournament started.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've lost yet, have they? The
No,
pot?
not yet.
No. So, um, yeah. I really would like Ireland to win the whole thing. I don't want to see South Africa win a bloody
Yeah.
fourth, fifth one or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, what would it be if South Africa won? Would that be their fifth or their fourth?
I think it's their fourth.
Be their fourth, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But we'll hear about it for the next 4 World Cups.
And look, I'm looking forward to Australia and Portugal. You know,
Yeah.
I mean that Portuguese back line is quite slick. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
they're pretty quick. So
Well, I actually think now the pressure's off Australia. We might see them play pretty good football. So, because it doesn't, what if they lose, they lose. If they win, if they lose, it's just another knife and dagger into Eddie Jones and Hamish McLennan. Um,
absolutely, yeah,
so they've got no reason not to try to throw it around, right? So, could always hope that Fiji lose to Georgia or something like. It's not likely, but um, they got to hope for the best. Try to put some points on, and
yeah,
if they're building for the future, well, build for the future. Look, just
yeah,
throw it around, see what you got. There's no reason not to now.
yeah. Well, they finally got a specialist. Well, not a specialist, but a regular centre pairing in Fiketti and Isaiah Izzy Parisi
Yeah,
at 12 and 13. So that might work a little bit better, I think. But Tom Hooper and Fraser McWright. I mean, they're great guys, and but are they really the Wallabies starting breakaways? You know,
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. So, but we'll see. Like the funny thing is, the Australian public were giving it to the Wallabies at the moment. In 3 years, we'll all be going, "Oh, mate, Carter Gordon's the best number 10 we got." Yeah, Tom Hooper. Oh, he's a brilliant six. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wear his hat, wear his shirt. I'm all over it. So, 100%.
Well, I still am a big Carter Gordon fan, but I'm worried that Eddie's going to destroy his game for life.
Yeah.
Because he had such a good Super Rugby season. I thought this kid's the real deal. He's quick. He's got a foot. He's got a good brain. He's a tough defender. Reminded me a bit of Larkham.
Yeah.
So I hope he comes out of this tournament okay. I hope these young blokes come out of okay.
So even Tate McDermott, I don't like he does 50 billion box kicks, but we're taking the box kicks out of his game, now making him play different to how he's played the rest of his career. So, and we're expecting he's going to play better, but we changed his style all of a sudden a couple of months out from the World Cup from the way that he's played for 10 years. Why do we think we're going to get a better outcome out of doing that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. He's not exactly the king of box kicks though. That's Nick White,
Yeah.
isn't he? the bloody box kick is a blight on the game, and they should outlaw it.
Yeah. Yeah, I said they should just leave it up the props, get props pull off out the back and just whack them. So
Yeah, my word, my word. It drives me mental, mate. You know,
yeah,
drives me mental. And seeing Nick White, we're on attack. We're a third or fourth phase into the 22. Come the Wallabies. What does he do? He dinks a ball over the top and kicks it dead in goal. It's just
yeah.
ridiculous, you know.
I saw him do one when we're just outside the 22 a little while ago, a couple of months ago. And I'm thinking, we're attacking the 22 and your box kick like it's a defensive box kick. Why? Just keep, we've got ball in hand in attacking position midfield. You can strike right or left, and your box kick, like you put up a box kick into the corner like you're trying to do a crossfield kick or something like that. It's I don't know. Are we trying to watch the NRL and do what they do because that looks good or something?
It's ridiculous, mate. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine George Gregan doing that? No, you can't. You know, or Nick Farr Jones. No, you can't. Even bloody, you know, Peter Flattery or some of the lesser known halfbacks wouldn't
Yeah,
do. And he just keeps doing it. You know.
yeah.
Anyway,
Even Whitaker, none of those guys did any of that sort of stuff.
no, 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 no. The box kick. It's a blight on the game.
No, 100%. So we'll bounce quickly. I just want to ask you one more question here. So the Shute Shield this season, it's the closest it's been in years.
Yep.
We're happy that it was as close as it was, and I think it's good for the competition that it was. So it's a lot tighter, and Sydney Uni not making it, not plus neither here nor there, except that's gifted someone else an opportunity to play finals football. That's good for the overall competition, isn't it?
Oh, my word, it is. It's always good for any competition to, you know, have sort of, you know, new blood, you know, winning championships and you know, featuring in finals play and so on and so forth. You know, the Shute Shield is a very healthy competition, in
Yeah,
my opinion. You know, the standard of rugby is very high. You know, I think it's well supported, and I just think that. You know, unfortunately, rugby is so on the nose in this country at the moment that you know, club rugby, you know, cops it as well. You know,
yeah,
but I've always thought the Shute Shield is you know, a strong competition. You know, full of good players.
yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it. And like I said a bit earlier, it's disappointing that it's not a professional competition. It's a very good amateur competition, but it'd be good to see enough money to make it professional. I think we've got people that if they had that ability to play in a professional environment and do it full time, I think our rugby really would thrive in the country.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Agree with that, Matty.
Yeah. Tony, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it tonight. So I know it's Friday night. You guys exciting a life as me by the look of it. So
Yeah, it's just me and the
not a
dog.
lot, not a lot going on. So
Good on you.
appreciate
Good on you, big
appreciate your time
fella.
and having a chat, and look forward to having a chat with you again in the future.
Outstanding. It's been great, Matty. Loved it. Good on you, mate.
Absolutely. There you go, everyone. You'll be able to catch this on Duckman TV a bit later on. We'll upload it on Duckman TV on YouTube and also on Facebook. And I'll turn this into a podcast beyond Weekend Warriors within the next week or so. Tony, thanks very much for your time. Keep on ducking, everyone, and I'll catch you all again soon.